good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are currently sitting. And welcome to Nexum3's webinar, Winning Bets, Programmatic Ad Tactics for iGaming Marketers. So just a quick slide here on viewing tips. Look, if you have any technical difficulties, any questions, please feel free to type it into the chat box. Our moderators in the background will, of course, provide any help, or, of course, use the email that's provided here. Regarding any questions around the topic today, again, drop them into the question box, and we will endeavor to answer them a bit later on. We also have a number of different polls and handouts that will pop up at various different points, so please make sure to make the most of that. Perfect. So a quick introduction to myself as we still wait for our guest speaker to join. So Travis Andrew, co-founder for Nexum3. I've been in and around the tech industry now for the last 8 to 9 years, and also been involved in the iGaming side, from sales to marketing and advertising for about the past 4 years. So really engaged in the industry, kept, pulse on finger on the pulse, I should say. And interesting fact about me is, despite my British accent, I am actually born and bred in the sunny land of South Africa. So if there's any South Africans here today, quick hello from me. Perfect. And I believe Holly has just joined on stage. Holly, can you hear me? Are you there? Okay, I think she's still having a little bit of technical difficulty joining, so we will introduce Holly as she come on. So perfect. So what can you expect from today? Look, what we really would love for you to do is to walk away from today having heard or learned something completely new, especially when it comes to programmatic advertising in the iGaming world. So our agenda is as follows. We'll do a quick introduction into programmatic advertising, state of the market, the secret sauce then of winning, as well as some case studies, practical takeaways and tips, and a live Q&A. We're also doing an exciting giveaway at the end of today's session, so stick around to find out what exactly that is. Perfect. So firstly, we're going to answer really what is programmatic advertising for those that are new to this form of advertising, and of course to those that are just getting started. So simply put, programmatic advertising can be defined as the use of automated tech for media planning and buying. Pretty simple, right? Well, actually the landscape looks sort of like this. So firstly, when we think about programmatic advertising, we think of it as all the things that are different and new in the world of advertising, from, of course, display to native, video, connected TV, digital out of home, and audio. Now, these components all fall under the umbrella of programmatic, which is accessible through one single source, allowing for sharing of data, tracking conversions, user journeys across a number of channels and devices. Now, think about how many devices you use or your consumer uses on a daily basis. Well, programmatic advertising delivers a consistent and cohesive way of delivering your communication. Now, secondly, it is key to make sure that your ad and creative format is, of course, reaching your intended audience. There is a way, this is really where the brilliance of the technology really comes into play, right? Allowing you to connect into a vast array of ad service, distributed accordingly for higher conversion, as well as purchasing advertising at a fair market value. Now, is it complex? Yes, but think about it this way. When programmatic first came into play, it could really only look at and do display advertising. But how it's evolved for content consumption and media distribution, this is where really so many more and new opportunities for touch points and reach across for more viewpoints is really where it's evolving and enhancing. We really fundamentally believe that everything will be bought programmatically at some point in the future. So now we've just covered a very brief overview and introduction into PA. I really wanted to focus on some key points in the market right now. So at a macro level, we have three, very important areas to quickly highlight. Inflation, of course, as we know, everybody's dealing with this. It's impacting everybody. And it's really meant that it's both lowered the consumer spending power and increased the cost for supply chains, meaning a lot of purchasing decisions are a lot more thought through by consumers these days. Now, this has really led and bled into business budgetary shifts, both with what's happening in the market right now and coming out of COVID-19. We saw a huge jump in the advertising spend across a number of industries. But now this is really starting to be reined in, especially with the downturn across the tech industry. There is a much more emphasized focus on profitability than there was before in the last couple of years. However, what we should stress is that companies that have continued to spend both during COVID and coming out of historic recessions in the past have all seen a huge upside from a consumer-based perspective. So even though there is budgetary shifts, it's now a question of how do we become smarter when thinking about our budgets. And lastly, consumer perspective. Now, a recent report by a leading consumer tech company mentioned that customer brand trust and confidence is actually at an all-time low. Why? Well, both a fear from consumers on data security risks, but also actually a lack of personalized messaging and engagement with their brands of choice, leading to an increase in consumers moving from one particular brand to another. So when it comes to actually the world of iGaming, what are some of the market indicators that we're looking at right now? So there's three to touch upon here. So firstly, growth. Now, yes, in terms of our market, there is still predictive growth. As you can see here, the market is looked to be based around 150 billion by the year 2030. And now you couple this up with the fact that there are more states in the US being open and legalized gambling, the Latin American markets, the African markets as well. It is really providing a vast array of opportunities for established brands to further their offerings, as well as the opportunity for new players to enter the market. Now, while sports betting is really rising in established popular sports like basketball or football, soccer for non-Europeans on the call, there's also been a rise in emerging sports like tennis and rugby. As well as that, a study done by the European Gambling Commission really illustrated that around half of most gamers are now actually betting through a mobile device. Betting through comfort is pushing the emphasis of mobile, including slicker app development and accessibility of mobile devices and data in emerging markets. Now, with the death of third-party data continuing to impact all products and services, but also really emphasize the value of personalization and customer insight, it is really leading to a lot more providers looking at gathering, segmenting, and action marketing efforts based wholly on first-party data. Now, regulation. As we all know, our industry is one of the most regulated markets in the world. Countries are implementing more prescriptive advertising and responsible gaming measures designed to protect users, right? Until recently, responsible gambling license conditions would require operators to implement measures to really promote responsible gambling and help players manage their gambling behavior. Of course, as we all know, this includes things like self-exclusion tools, blacklists, deposit limits, and so on and so forth. Now, really, there's been some milestones in the market recently with proposed offers around affordability checks, such as in the UK Gambling Review White Paper. Now, yes, these checks are designed to ensure that players can actually afford to gamble without financial hardship, as well as unintentional measures. However, the real issue here is that for most recreational gamblers, as we know, divulging detailed financial information to make a modest bet for entertainment purposes is not ideal. Regulators really need to consider carefully how these measures could impact users in terms of driving new users away, but also pushing users to look into the black market for gambling as well. Now, the last sort of key indicator in the market we've seen is introduction of new technologies. VR and live dealers are set to continue the revolution in the online gambling space. As we know, VR offers more immersive and comprehensive, realistic gaming experiences, whether it's open world environments or against a multiplayer arena or solving puzzles. As well as that, the live dealer, of course, gives you the best of both worlds, the convenience and speed of digital games and with the atmosphere of land-based casinos. Now, outside of this, we do also have the emergence of crypto casinos, which we've seen rising rapidly, more competitive bonuses, and of course, the emergence of AI, which we will touch upon next. Perfect. So in terms of some key market changing elements, right? So there are a few to touch on here. And we're going to begin firstly with AI. Now, AI in terms of trend analysis, we're really referring to the understanding of consumer behavior, because not only could it really allow you to analyze gamers' preference in terms of what they've been engaging with in the past, what type of games, and how we can suggest similar games to them, it also allows us to understand potential security risks and fraud risks, which of course can boost responsible gaming. Now, AI for gamer and betting traits on a personal level to detect when a user is going beyond risk boundaries can also, of course, further enhance your reputation in the market. AI then also really allows you to enhance your advertising when it comes to things like bidding scalability and, of course, output for marketing in content creation and personalization. However, we should stress that we see the human touch still being hugely important, right? No matter how good the algorithms are, we're still going to need a human to piece this together, make real-time adjustments, and of course, analyze it for intent purposes. Now, when we look at effectively the channel side of things, we've seen the emergence of 3 new channels: digital out-of-home, in-game advertising, and of course, connected TV. Now, digital out-of-home really provides a platform to engage on both a wider brand equity level, but also show the message is conveyed out of a traditional channel to really have a look and feel of a more emotive feel. We're working at the moment with a particular provider who is really looking to enhance this and reach their gamers in that type of way. Now, in-game provides a real opportunity for, of course, more direct and personalized promotions and bonuses, really looking to ensure that the gamer still has very high active time, increasing their wallet spend, and of course, brand value. Now, lastly, connected TV. Now, this can be a bit of a tricky one depending on the regulation in certain countries and states, but with a number of operators like Netflix and existing operators like Pluto TV providing a cheaper or even free ad-supported streaming service, there are the potential opportunities to make use of this channel. We've already seen some insight and some advancements in this in certain states in the US, so we are looking very positively, especially when it comes to those type of markets. Now, lastly, and it's a big one, data. So, as we all know and mentioned before and continue to think about, we are going and pushing for a big view into first-party data approaches, especially with the looming expiry date of the third-party cookie ban, right? We've all been planning for it, adjusting to it, and refreshing our Google to see when it actually is going to happen, right? But effectively, what are the biggest opportunities and challenges there? Well, firstly, traditional consumers, as we all know, can be found on your large platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Google. And what we do is we call these traditionally walled garden platforms. Now, effectively, the costs to use and advertise on these platforms are already expensive, but it's actually continuing to rise. And there's not really an indicator that it's likely to decrease anytime in the near future, meaning the cost of acquisition and the click-through rates and all these different elements are likely to go up. Yes, they are the biggest platforms, and yes, the consumers can mostly be found on them, but every game provider, every operator are using them with the same tactics, with the same strategy creating really a saturated marketplace. So it really begs the question, how are you getting ahead of the game? And lastly, around this is, of course, the challenge of analysis. You are not really able to delve into the weeds of your consumer data and really provide a backbone for true in-depth consumer analysis. So really, these platforms are creating what we call a black box environment. Now, thinking about this really then bleeds nicely into the DMP side of things, with DMP standing for data management platforms, right? Now, these are really starting to become a key component of any online business. DMPs really provide a detailed look into who your consumer is, what do they do, where do they go, how often do they go on there, what devices do they go, and really giving you a better understanding of what is the best means and best way of delivering our message to our consumer audience. Speaking about that message, we can then know what resonates with them, what tone is them, and how we can strive for actually a much more personalized approach. Think about the last time you engaged with a brand that actually knew who you was and the positive impact that it actually had on you. Now, effectively activating the engagement can also be tough. Segmenting, of course, but activating, channeling it, having the right experts, and of course, the cost side of things. So really, it is key to understand as much as you can about the publisher's data set for both your usage of this, your outreach, and of course, where your budgets are going to go. Typically think about if you want to use a publisher within, let's say, the state of Ontario. There are so many different publishers, DMPs, and all these various aspects that will give you insight into this. But of course, it's incredibly important to understand these as best as you can. And of course, lastly, the third-party cookie, right? So the doomsday is coming really soon, but how are you really preparing for this, right? So if we wrap up all these three different elements into this, it's really about finding and understanding a partner that can provide a robust data set in a cookieless environment to still further engagement, whether it's around first-time depositors, retargeting, or of course, general brand equity building engagement. Lovely. And now we're going to come over to the secret source side, which our partner MIQ is going to run, but I do believe that she's running into a few difficulties at the moment. So we're just going to have a quick 2-minute break, 3-minute break until we sort this out, and then we'll keep going again. And thank you for those that have answered the poll so far. We do have another poll that just came out about what are you most excited on programmatic advertising. So we'll take a quick couple of minute break and come back, and hopefully we'll have the MIQ team on board with us to walk through exactly how programmatic is used, the real ins and outs of it, as well as some detailed case studies approach. So we'll be back in 2-3 minutes. Awesome. So we're still waiting for the MIQ team to connect, but I thought maybe this will be a good opportunity to answer any questions that may be there. So how exactly does programmatic help build brand equity? Thank you, Adam. That's a great question. So I think just to answer that question really quickly, when we think about our ROI and when we think about how exactly we determine results, we're very quick, especially in the iGaming world, to look at the numbers, right? What is our click-through rates or our CPA, and really focus on the hard numbers at hand, which of course we'll always have to do to determine really how well something is going. But when it comes to brand equity, how are we really engaging with users? How are we really making sure that they feel a part of the brand? Now, there's a lot to be learned from other industry when it comes to fashion, high fashion or retail, when it comes to really collaborating with users. So firstly, gathering feedback on games, on ideas, on what exactly they would like to see, and building an equity around, yes, we know we're a brand for recreational use and entertainment, but effectively, how do we make sure we are giving you a better service? So, we found that certain brands and operators that are starting to promote more responsible gaming, for example, are enhancing their brand equity when it comes to actually providing a trusted platform. And with that being said, we finally do have Holly on. Holly, apologies for the technical difficulties you may have had.
That is so okay. I'm so sorry for being
No problem at all. It was really, really good timing. It's actually over to you. But of course, please introduce yourself to our lovely audience first and foremost. And if you have any fun facts, please do so and go for it.
There's a lot of pressure with the fun facts. If I think of one, I will
go for it.
I can't think of one just yet. I'm just happy to be on the call now at this point. So lovely to meet everyone. Thanks a lot for joining, and thanks to Nexum team as well for inviting me on here. I'm Holly Fitzgerald. I'm a client engagement lead at MIQ Digital, programmatic specialist, which I'm going to talk to you guys about. Been with the business for about 6 years now. So yeah, really excited to kind of talk to you guys just around the secret sauce, I suppose. Am I able to toggle?
You should be able to. Give it a crack. I'll do it for you. No worries. I'll be your assistant.
Thank you so much. Okay, cool. So betting on new customer growth with MIQ. Just toggle on here. So I know we went through kind of the content yesterday, so I have seen it, and I know that Travis spoke about some really interesting things, and there are some complicated kind of things that we're dealing with within the programmatic landscape, like the demise of third-party cookies and DMPs and walled gardens and everything like that. But that's the exciting part of programmatic. It's all about innovating and finding ways of reaching and speaking with our customers, right? And for the gambling brands specifically, it's a super exciting time in terms of when pre-COVID, it was very much kind of going into the bookies and putting your bets in, right? But we saw a massive shift when we had lockdown in people going online to do their bets. And we're seeing about 50% of all bets in the UK are being placed online, and 50% of those across mobile devices, right? So that's a really exciting time to be a part of kind of the gambling world, we think. If we move on one. In terms of like how customers are consuming their media, it's in a really, really vast and diverse way. When I started here, 6 years ago, it was very much like desktop, mobile, tablet. It was kind of mobile was coming in, right? But now there's so many ways that you can kind of engage with your customers because they're consuming things in a really diverse way. You can see that really reflected as well within the programmatic landscape. If you move on one, Travis, it really reflects, that ecosystem really reflects how you can reach users. There's so many different platforms like DSPs, like what we own in terms of like Xandel, all the way through to Hivestack, from different data partners, different inventory partners that you're able to kind of partner with as well. So it's really, really fragmented and quite cluttered. So if you work with one of these partners, you're not really unlocking like the true value of programmatic. But if you work with 5 to 6 to 12 on one particular campaign, but they're still in silo, it's a lot of heavy lifting to do, but you're still not getting a real holistic view of what's kind of driving that performance. And that's kind of where MIQ comes in. If you want to flick on. So MIQs, we're a programmatic media specialist. We essentially kind of sit on top of the whole kind of ad ecosystem, and we work with tons of kind of iGaming and gambling brands to help navigate, especially when it's such a regulated market, ensuring that we're tapping into those compliant areas and still driving performance. So as a bit of a history lesson, we started about 13 years ago. And we started as a two-man band. We've very much scaled globally now. So we're in 9 different countries, and 20 different offices, and about 1,300 people now. So really, really big business. If you'd like to move on one. In terms of like how we work, so I mentioned that we kind of bring the industry of capabilities together in one place. So for us, it's talking with marketers and just understanding kind of what their business objectives are, what their marketing objectives are, how they kind of ladder up to that as well. And figuring out what you want to achieve, right, in 6 months' time, 12 months' time. We always talk about kind of sustainable growth, right, because we know that performance is so important, and we kind of grew ourselves as a performance business. But there's so much more you can be doing for that long-term sustainable growth. So we work with many different data partners, many different platforms, many different channels. So it's all about what's going to drive that business objective for you guys, and we'll basically customize our approach based on that. The second thing is we're tech enabled as well. So we've got our own proprietary tech to sit on top of that ad ecosystem, which is really important because of the vast scale of it. We had to build out kind of different applications to make sure that we can connect, discover, and activate. So there's 3 core applications. We've got our analytics studio, where our data scientists, analysts, kind of live and breathe. It's all about bringing in kind of all that data, making sure you're making the right connections. And once you build those connections, it's all about the intelligence hub, so visualizing that as well. I don't know if we're going to get time to go through it today, but I'll try. But essentially, it's like, how do you look at those insights from a media lens, from a tactic perspective, to ensure that before we even spend a penny, we know that we're reaching the right audience. And then there's the trading lab as well. This is for our traders. It's basically, we work with like 8 different DSPs, and the trading lab sits on top of all of these DSPs. So it allows them just to be really efficient and really effective with the campaigns that they're about to run. It gives like tons of recommendations and different strategies, what's the best DSPs to use, all that kind of stuff. So really, really effective for our traders to move faster and be efficient when trading. And then the final thing is like, we're people powered, and I think this is the biggest thing for me. We're a full managed service business, and we've got 1,300 people, and about 400 of them are like data scientists, analysts, engineers. But then working with us, you get kind of a dedicated extension to your team, I suppose. So traders, creative designers, account managers, just make sure operationally everything's kind of working and ticking along like that. Cool. So in terms of how we can help you guys, especially within kind of the iGaming gambling world, is being able to navigate and tap into those compliant inventory and data sources to really find new kind of customers. And it's really important to kind of understand those regulations, and there's nuances across every single DSP as well. So we help kind of navigate that. The second thing is omnichannel as well. So we obviously have access to your performance-led creators, but also your brand-led kind of creators. And for us, when it comes to sustainable growth, long term, 6 months, 12 months, how do we walk or run while we maintain that performance side of things? So we can give you that channel mix to make sure that we're still being really effective there. And then personalized approach as well. Having tailored messaging is really, really impactful and personalized to customers. And we know that's what drives really efficient and effective campaigns. So once you reach that right audience, how do you make sure that you're being really personal when you're speaking to them? Cool. So how do we find kind of the most relevant and compliant audiences? It's first all about kind of strategizing, right? And we very much kind of collaborate from that point of view. But when it comes to like gambling brands, this is kind of an example of Martin. We really want to reach someone who's into TV programming around football, for instance, has been exposed to like Paddy Power, William Hill. From an advert perspective, from a demography perspective, we want them to be male skewed and 25 to 34 within ABC One, and keywords and domains, we want them to be showing intent or interest around the Premier League or Ascot, Cheltenham, and all that kind of thing. So once we really kind of build out that picture in terms of that Martin as who we want to reach, that's when our analysts kind of get involved, connect with the right data sets, and then the output is essentially 2 things. First one is like geographic. So we look at the whole of the UK, as for instance here, and we look at those really high indexing, dense populated areas of where your audience is. And also we do overlapping keywords, overlapping domains as well. So there's a few different kind of levers that we can pull from an activation point of view. And it's great because this sort of thing is completely on the channel. So whether we do this across CTV or digital out of home or performance-led campaigns, it literally encompasses the whole thing. So you can get a really connected plan as well. from a personalized messaging point of view, this is really cool. There's so much you can do with your creative. Once you get the right audience and the right strategies, being able to engage with them is really, really important. But also we know that 80% of consumers are more likely to make that purchase or engage with that brand once they've had that personalized experience. So you can do tons of stuff, but a couple of examples here is around syncing your creative with your live odds. Or being visible during key kind of sporting events as well. We've always seen a real drive down on CPA when we're upweighting around those particular times. But just as an example here, it's probably quite small, so you have to look quite close to the screen here. But you can see as an example we did with Betfred, there was quite a few different dynamic feeds that we brought into these creators. One being the live odds, two being a countdown to the match. And then the third being the football shirts of teams that was about to play as well. So you could be really fun and creative with types of dynamic stuff that you can kind of pull into it. And that can also work across, again, an on-the-channel approach. So it doesn't have to be just, your mobile format. You can do some really cool stuff on CTV around, contextually relevant content that may be coming up as well. Great. So once we've kind of figured all that out, it's all about optimizing to what the desired outcome is, right? So we're obviously going to, before we spend a penny, really understand what behavioural segments and contextual tactics that we need to hit in order to reach the right audience. But then we kind of want to get more intelligent, right, with what we do, and to be really, really efficient and utilise the data that you already have access to, which is your website, right? So when we put a pixel down, we can really start to analyse and understand who are the browsers versus the spenders, right? And how can we start just building out really sophisticated retargeting strategy to just reach those high value audiences and attract and retain those guys, right? Because browsers are great in terms of sending them to your site, but getting that ROI off the back of them is what we want to drive, right? So understanding and analysing that kind of data is really important for us. And once we do that, it's all about building some lookalikes as well, so some predictive strategies, which is something that MIQ owns and builds, our analysts do. So once we really understand that converting audience, there's loads of different levers and triggers that we can start to analyse, whether it be time of day of week, audience, keyword, domain, there's tons of different things. We essentially find more of the audience that look like that in those sort of environments. So you want to kind of increase that lifetime value of your acquisition strategies. Great. Case study.
Before we jump into the case study, are you able to maybe show a quick demo of that?
As long as we have time, yeah, perfect. I did whistle stop that. I was getting a little bit.
No worries. We still have some time.
Great. Keep sending your questions through as well, guys, if you have any on that. So I can't share my screen.
I think there's an issue due to the connectivity. Okay, not a problem. I think what we can do is we can share that post with the attendees, maybe. So
yeah, definitely. We can share some screen grabs. I think as well, the most powerful thing about the Intelligence Hub, so I spoke about it earlier, and this is like our visualization tool, all that data connections from a media lens. So how can we get some really cool insights and know what kind of audience we need to reach, what they look like, how they spend their time online and everything like that. When you have a pixel down on site, I spoke about in one slide ago, especially within the gambling world, you have your casino, your poker, your horse racing, your football, etc., etc. These are all different kinds of audiences that come to your site. It's not one user fits all, right? It's all about how do we segment audiences who really love the horse racing, and when there's Ascot on, to ensure we're building out really interesting tactics that we know have the intent to bet on horse racing versus the football guys who love the Premier League. So once we kind of get a pixel on site, you can also go onto our Intelligence Hub and look at your kind of owned pixel, which is what it's called. If I show you, you'd understand it a little more. But you're able to go into kind of your owned pixel, and you're able to look at literal insights from your website as well. So it's not shared with anyone else. It's purely for you and your website. And you can break it up as much as you want, whether that be from a depositing user to a logged on user. If it's a logged on user, we can look to exclude them, and just because we only want to kind of find new users, etc. So once you kind of break out that really rich data that you already have access to, you can do some really intelligent things from a tactic perspective from our side.
Awesome. Lovely.
if anyone wants to see that as well, it takes about 10 minutes to run through, 15 minutes to run through, and I'm happy to do that.
Love it. Thanks. Go.
Great. So this is just a case study. I mean, we've got a few, but I thought I'd bring this one with me just because it's a really interesting brand that we started working with about a year and a half ago. And it's a really new kind of online betting business. Obviously a very kind of crowded market, especially within the UK. They really wanted to make some sort of cut through, build their brand equity and awareness, but also drive those the customer acquisitions as well as first time deposits. So it was quite a big job that we had to do. So solution wise, we basically built out a bit of a channel mix that we think was going to drive the best kind of brand awareness, but really help filter down from a performance perspective. So we used everything from online video to YouTube to native formats, which worked really well, to display and mobile as well. And then we built in kind of our precise audience targeting. So I mentioned before, we're very much like omni-channel. So we've got a really consistent kind of data-led approach across all different channels. We're not saturating each or, overlapping much at all. It's all about how can we make sure we're reaching the right person at the right time with the right kind of format, depending on where they are in the funnel themselves. And then we started to bring in our kind of data analysis team to build out kind of propensity modeling, I suppose. So has that user got a high propensity to convert? Let's build out some really sophisticated kind of retargeting strategies as well as predictive strategies to do that first deposit, because that was kind of the end goal that we wanted to do. So all of it kind of filtered down to that one end goal. If you move on to the next slide, Travis, we had some really good results. So supply wise, we served 50 million impressions to all really relevant audiences. We beat their £100 benchmark by to £86. The key result, which I find really interesting, is £30 when we were we were kind of upweighting during peak moments. This was around the FIFA World Cup, where we managed to drive that CPA down to £30. And for a new business with relatively high budgets, that was a really good result. Cool.
Lovely.
So am I doing key takeaways?
Absolutely. Please go for it, Holly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Do you want to move it on one, Travis?
There you go.
Cool. So just a couple of key takeaways. I think agnostic. I think you can get really, really creative when you think about all the different types of data partners or supply partners that you can tap into in the market. Obviously, there's a lot out there, so it can get quite confusing. But I think if you're really open to different new bits of tech, different new bits of supply, whatever it might be, channels as well. There's some really cool stuff going on within CTV at the moment in a really data-led, measurable way. So just think kind of agnostic and what types of new ways you can think you can be working. Second thing is like unlock data. I mean, for me, like website data is probably the most untapped data set that brands have. So I would definitely have a little look at that and see what you can unlock from it to become really kind of strategic and tactical with different campaigns. And then the final one's around personalized creatives. I mean, there's so much you can do with creatives to be really, really engaging, especially with the new tech that we've got nowadays. I think when you reach the right audience at the right time and you've got the right creative, that's super engaging and always drives performance. So those would be my 3 key takeaways.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Holly. Yeah, I mean, look, just to reiterate that, I think it's, having that whole agnostic view about how we can really deliver a true personalized approach when it comes to engaging with consumers, unlocking their data in a more effective way. It will really give us a really good stranglehold in how we can go and enhance the way we want to get consumers, lowering our costs, of course, but also become more dynamic in our approach to the market. So completely agree with that. Thank you very, very much, Holly. Lovely. Let's go over to some question and answers. So yes, Adam, thank you very much for that question earlier on. We answered that one, and we have another one from Ulash, which is, in your view, how does programmatic advertising differ from always-on campaigns to seasonal campaigns? Holly, what do you think about that one?
I think it's an interesting one. I think obviously within gambling, we've seen the brands that we work with, there's a real kind of seasonal effect in terms of when the Premier League comes on, or key games come on, or Cheltenham comes on, etc. That's when you see a real surge of budget. But I think when you do that, you've kind of got all your other competitors doing the same sort of thing. And I think from an awareness point of view, it's always good to have a trickle of something. And then when you are on the lead up, because with the analysis that we can do, we can really start to understand when people are kind of in the right mindset, right? I mean, I go to Cheltenham every single year, and I'm thinking about it the week before, so it's like, how can you make sure you're capturing the right people at the right time, even on the lead up when they're getting really excited for the event. So I think like BAU wise, always handy just to make sure that you're not going dark, because going dark within a really kind of crowded market is always, you've got a lot to kind of work back, I suppose. You have to work back to get back up there when you go dark, if that makes sense. So I think it's always good to have a level, but the upweighting, we know that CPAs get driven right down. So that is really effective. So I think you need a bit of both. Like, you need to balance your budget and make sure that you're trickling. But then when you have those massive opportunities, you're doing that. And I think that's why it's really important to have like really skilled traders as well. Like, when you've got those skilled traders, they're very aware, they know when they have to pull those levers. But that's just part of their job, right? So I think a bit of both, but definitely the upweighting around those key events is super important.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100% agreed. And I also think there's an argument to be had around customer retention here as well. Now, again, first-time depositors is always, a key indicator of growth. But I think if we had to analyze how much it costs to win a new customer versus to keep a current customer, the difference between the two is huge. It's massive. So an always-on campaign will really just further enhance your continued engagement, your brand building, your brand equity, to ensure that actually we still able to keep our customer, our attention levels are high beyond that first, hey, bonus or promotion. No, it's all about making sure that consumer continues their journey and their growth with us, almost becoming an ambassador through always-on campaigns as well.
Yeah, agreed. And I think as well, when you've got that data, so that pixel down, for instance, where they have an account, you can speak to them in a different way. You don't have to speak to them in the same way you have to speak to new acquired customers, right? Acquiring customers is really expensive, and you do have to do, like, we see the most success when you've got some sort of promo going on, right? Whereas if someone's already, like, I'm a Paddy Power person personally, but they don't need to speak to me like that. Whereas they do need to speak to someone else, trying to incentivize. So I think once you've got the data, you can have different strategies as well. That's what we do a lot of, like ensuring that we've got different strategies for different consumers, because they're not all the same. You can't speak to them all the same either, because that's what on brand equity, that's what diminishes it a little bit. Like, I'm a customer of Paddy Power, and if they kept like putting out there like free bet just to me, I'd be like, why are you giving everyone free bets? So you gotta manage that as well. It's interesting. It's really interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely agreed. 100%. Perfect. Is there any other questions from anybody in the audience? We'll give you a couple of minutes. In the meantime, we have also just shared a white paper in case that is of interest for anybody to download, as well as a chance to book a free consultation with us. So what we're doing in partnership with MIQ is providing both a free consultative health check, but also money off your first campaign, should you guys want to do a test campaign or venture into what we can do together with MIQ here as well. And the key thing to stress and add is that what we've seen really work wonders is that element of market growth. As we all know, going into a new market, into a new geography, it always is so tricky to navigate the waters when it comes to partner access, data access, publisher access, and all these different elements. So having a partner that can onboard this quickly and unlock that in kind of no given time at all is really some of the interesting points we've seen when it comes to the question of how do we become better when it's first-time depositors in new markets and so on and so forth. So key things to stress there. It's perfect. Let's have a look at the Q&A again. And I believe that is it. So great, guys. Thank you very much. Holly, any last minute thoughts that you'd like to leave with the audience?
No, I think that's all great.
Perfect, lovely. Guys, apologies again for the technical difficulties earlier on, but really appreciate you guys joining. And we will be sending a recording of the webinar either tomorrow or first thing on Monday. So thank you again. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll speak soon. Bye-bye.